Hey guys, One Up Indie here, coming with a video which is hopefully good for beginners, people who want to start for a game jam, who people just think like, hey, I want to recreate one of those good old classics. So for example, this is a Breakout clone or Arkanoid, depending what you want to have. And then you want to know, hey, how is the whole process of making a video game? What should I know? And all the stuff, and for example, what kind of role is actually appropriate for me. So for example, do you want to be the graphics guy? Do you want to be the game designer? Do you want to be the programmer? All that stuff, and we will hop through all three roles so you see basically what's happening, what you can basically do, and well, then you can see the whole process in one, let's hopefully under a 1 hour video. And of course I will just separate that into 3 parts. So for example, if you're thinking like, I just want to see the programmer part, or I want to see the other parts, well, below there will be a neat little thing just showing on which part you are on. So without further ado, so if you want to know that and recreate one of those old school classics, that will be in the 3rd part. Stick around. This is One Up Indie. I am a developer, so if you like what you're seeing, hey, why not consider sharing, liking and subscribing, and of course commenting. That would be pretty sweet. Alrighty, so let's jump in the first role, which would be the game designer. So the game designer just basically just checks out the old game, which is then Breakout or Arkanoid. So this is a screenshot of Arkanoid, which was on Atari, Amiga and all those things. And then your role as a game designer just is there to analyze and research how the whole thing is being structured. And then you're thinking, okay, what do I need to know to build or replicate such a game? And of course, then you can expand on it. So the first thing which you need to understand is, as a game designer, you technically don't do the code. You just say like, hey, instructions to the graphics guy, hey, I need the graphics. So for example, those blocks I do need, or for example, I need the player, this kind of thing, which is then stretchable. And the other thing is how the game mechanic is. So the first thing, which is the most crucial part, is, for example, here, this is our ball. So we need ball physics, and the ball has some properties. So basically the physics is that it's just bouncing off these walls. So basically these are walls, and then it bounces off the blocks, but by touching the ball, the blocks disappear. And of course some blocks have just 1 HP, so 1 hit and they're gone. And then for example, some like these ones have 3. So here a little bit of management. Then the next thing is there are kind of power-ups, and these power-ups enlarge the player. So basically this dude is then getting stretched. So this is one of them. Then you got some shooting, which we're not going to do. We're just going to do the stretching, and then we're pretty much done. We want to have a functional prototype, and then all the other mechanics are top on. So the next thing, which the game designer is just looking at, okay, we got the ball covered, and then, well, we need the second thing, which is the player. So here input, so he can just move left and right up to this point. So he's kind of limited, the player, where he or she, or the stick, whatever that is, can go. And then we got live, so you can have the ball fall below the player only 2 or 3 times, and each time, well, 1 life is getting subtracted, and then it's like, then it's gone. And then the next thing, of course, besides the player, the balls, we need to establish how the blocks are being structured. So here they're kind of neat, I don't know, could be 16 by 8 or whatever, or smaller or bigger, and this is then of course up to you. And then we got an outside structure, which is kind of limiting this. So basically here, this is the GUI part, basically some invisible walls, which is just saying like, hey, here bounce off, and of course here an area where controller sits and just checking, okay, the ball has fallen below. And of course then you need kind of a restart mechanic, which is just saying, okay, spawn the ball somewhere here or whatever, then move him upwards so we can continue playing. And then of course once you're out of lives, boom, game over, and then you can restart. And then you got some other mechanics, which is then score or some power ups or whatever Yeah, we can do this, but not here. The only thing which I just did is, for example, you got a chance on those blocks. If they are being destroyed, then we drop a power up, which is then expanding how long this player, so basically this thingy here, which is doing the bouncing for the player is. And therefore, then we are pretty much finished. So the game designer has done his part. For example, what a game designer from time to time can do, this is then of course important, he or she can actually create a prototype by itself if there is enough familiarity with the engine which they're using. So GameMaker, Unity, and God knows what else, and Godot, of course, Godot, the god Godot. And therefore we got what we need. And therefore a few things which are needed to consider, basically just analyzing structures and then putting them in a game design document. So basically just writing that stuff down so everybody knows, hey, this is the vision. And then the other guys actually need to fulfill them and create those things. Because concerning the functionality, this is where the programmer steps in, just saying, okay, functionality bouncing, functionality dropping pickups, functionality input, and so on. So for example, input and concerning going left and right with the player, then this is most of the time of the game designer. Or for example, you are like me, you are an all-rounder, you can do basically all three roles. Then you can do it like me, just do it in one sitting for one-man army. Not recommended for beginners, but of course you can do if you like. Alrighty, so once we are done here, then we jump to the artist, and then the job of the artist is like, okay, I need to do my own art or get resources and maybe modify them. So this is where we are. So basically what the artist needs to get, first of all, he needs to get the player sprite, which is then expandable, then the ball, then those colored blocks. So here there are different ways how you can achieve that. It could be just a specific sprite, or for example, you could recolor that in the engine. I guess the artist most of the time just knows, hey, do I have to do that? Or for example, can the programmer do that? And for example, a GUI, which is kind of clamping or reducing, where visually you can see, okay, this is where, well, everything is being bounced off. So basically the GUI, the graphical overlay, which is here. So basically here, the kind of walls, then maybe do some shenanigans, like for example, put in some walls, and then here the green part, which is then a neat little background. And then of course you got a background here, which is just signifying, okay, this is off limits area. So for example, what I did, this is I guess the easiest way, you just go into Open Game Art. So very great site, and then you just input Breakout or Arkanoid, and then for example you can get your stuff here. Of course, link in the description below you. This is where I got my resources from, basically 3. So first of all, here I liked how the blocks were looking like, and then you got different kind of styles, which is pretty sweet. So I took this one, CC3. So if you use it commercially, then please add that it's from John M. And then of course the next thing, which is looking pretty neat. So here we got the GUI for the thing around, then we got the player, then we ball, and then the pickup. So basically everything is already in here, plus the background. So here for scrolling, all that stuff, pretty sweet. If you read through this, then they just say like, hey, there's some copyright breachment, but it's actually not. So this dude reimagined it, so it's pretty good and fine to use, I guess, even commercially, and it says even CC0, so you are on the good side. And here I just wanted to have a specific ball and do it so it kind of blinks. So I just took out a few of those balls, and then well, the graphics guy said like, okay, sweet, this is what we need. So basically, once again, we need essential graphics. So basically the blocks, the player, the ball, and then non-essential, but or let's say complementary stuff, which is then the background here. Yeah, those nice little walls, and then for example the background which can be used to scroll, because this is a repeated background, and then boom, we got ourselves a game, and of course here the ball. So we are done with that part. So basically that was already the graphics guy. He already put that stuff in. So basically if you are the graphics guy, he just put that stuff in there. So background here, the blocks, then the GUI, so these parts, and then we plant them. And then, for example, this could be your part where you just customize how that stuff actually looks. So here you got a little overlapping of the game designer, of the programmer and the graphics guy. So let's just keep it still for the graphics guy. He's just inputting all that stuff in here. So what do we do? After a short cut in the video, we will customize that live, and then after we kind of customize it so it looks kind of neat, then we jump into the programmer, which is making all that stuff, besides looking nicely, making it more functional, because functionality is then of the thing of the graphics dude in the normal case. Alright, so a little transition, and we got ourselves an empty project, and here we have imported already our sprite. So the graphics dude, we're still in his role, imported all the stuff which we needed. So for example, the ball. So basically here you can actually check it out, different kind of sprites, and then we can animate them so it nicely does its thing. Or for example here, collision mask, you can actually put an ellipse, which is definitely slower concerning the collision, but since this is just one ball, easy peasy. And of course then our player, this is a little bit more interesting, but let's say we got something like this. So this is our player, but how can we actually make him expand? Actually kind of easy. For that we have our 9 slice. First of all, you need to activate it, and then for example here, this is the part which we want to repeat, so left and right. So therefore you just drag those lines in here, and then as you can see, now we can expand him as much as we like. So here we can actually utilize the 9 slice, which is now a standard in GameMaker Studio. So let's make it really long, so as you can see, but the point is we don't want him to be too long. So this is for example the minimum, and this would be, I don't know, 2 times longer or whatever. Therefore we can just utilize the 9 slice. For example, if this wouldn't be there, then it would kind of stretch differently, which we don't want. The preview kind of doesn't show that, but 9 slice for that. And then a little power up here, rotating nicely. So here looking kind of neat, so nothing too fancy. And then for example, if you're the graphics guy, yeah, so this is how it looked before. So this is where you need to cut out stuff. So this is the whole tile set. You need to cut out the small pieces here, the player and all that stuff. I guess here we can just skip on that because this is not our primary goal, and of course here a background or whatever, and therefore you need to make this presentable, and then of course you can import it so it looks nice. And then of course here kind of pieces, and then we put them together, and then a little thing, for example for the GUI left, top and right, I once again made it a 9 slice. So why did I do that? Because then we can stretch that thing. Actually working without the 9 slice, but we're gonna place these things in the room, and then you will see what I mean by that. And then we got a controller, which has just a dummy sprite. Then the blocks defined, for example here, nice different kind of blocks were just put out, and of course they will not animate. So here 0, and then the second one which has 2 HP, and then 3 HP, a gold one. You can of course do it like you want, and of course maybe sometimes you want to have blocks which are indestructible, and then you're pretty much done. And then of course here kind of a object wall which we are placing invisibly around it. So let's start and customize it. So the first thing which I did, and this is definitely not recommended, but I want it to be a little bit more visible, so therefore I just made a really crummy room. So this is 480 by 450 concerning this size, and then the same stuff is then for the width and the height of the camera. But of course I did it like, what is it, 2 times, and then we can kind of nicely zoom in. So therefore for now nothing is seen. I could start it, but then we would just get a black screen, which is I guess not too satisfying. So therefore we're gonna do one thing. We go into our background, and here we imported a nice little background sprite, which is this one, as you can see. Now it's here. So let's animate this, because why not? And of course, as you can see now, it's pretty sweet. And then of course, horizontal speed, I don't know, 0.1 and then 0.1. Let's go for 2. And then, for example, we can actually check it out how it does look like. Yeah, not too bad. So this is nice, but of course, this is a little bit irritating. So you don't know where the borders are, and therefore we're gonna do a little thing which you normally don't see. We are using the asset layer. So this one will be for the black areas. So they are pretty much cutting out the area which we don't want to have a focus. So I'm gonna call that asset black area. So here we go. And here we can actually GUI take this black part, make this a little bit easier to put in. So 8 by 8 doesn't really matter. And then we can say like something like this. Input them here, and hopefully you get the gist how to do that. For example, if you don't know how to do the lines, you can just drag those lines in here and then make it a little bit nicer and easier to put in. Of course, we need one on the top, and therefore we got ourselves kind of an area distinguished, which is kind of the important area, which is this one. So as you can see now, it's looking a little bit more different. Of course, here make this correctly, not like me, and then we can customize it with some additional I would say GUI things, so it does look even nicer. So once again, a second asset layer, and here we can first of all do our repeat things. Come on, once again 8 by 8, because these parts are really small. So here let's put one in here, something like this. And as you can see now, we can repeat. So this is looking good. Put that one to the bottom. Copy paste. And then we can have a top part also. Interesting. Where's the other one off? Here we go. And then we got even more parts. So for example, here I got my corners. So I put the corner on top, and then the next corner. And then of course, this already looks pretty neat by itself. But we want to have some extra stuff, which is then on the left side. So here, this thingy here. And then for example, and copy paste that a few times here and there, and therefore this is looking good. Now I know why I did this, because as you can see here, we got some fake shadow in there. Therefore we need to take the left one, and this one we will repeat. Come on. A little bit. Come on. So now of course we are overwriting this one. Top. Can customize it, but make it a little bit more beautiful. So let's say we got one of those cylinders here, the next one, I don't know, somewhere here, and the third one somewhere here. And then of course we can play the same thing for the right part. So then we can just copy paste them, bam, and bam, we actually created in a few minutes, hopefully not too many, our GUI. And as you can see now, we can animate it, and it is looking nice. So let's get rid of those lines, because they can be kind of irritating, at least for me. And therefore we already did quite a lot of things, but of course we are not finished. So as you can see now, we got a guiding line for where walls are supposed to be. And then of course the empty area, and this area is where, well, the wall cannot fall. For that we need then first of all a little thing which is important for us. So this is then our player. So let's create objects, which is called object player, and give it the sprite and place him into our instances layer, so basically we can use it. Here we go. Let's place them somewhere here. It doesn't really matter. This is of course then once again up to you. Then the next thing is we need the ball. Of course, there's no functionality in here. This is just to customize, and therefore the actual coder, so the programmer, can take over and say like, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing here. And then he can already say, okay, I know how the game designer has kind of propped his idea, his vision, and then with the graphics guy, they kind of said like, okay, this is how it roughly is supposed to be looking like. And then those two can already set up all the whole stuff in here. And then of course the programmer can say like, no, that's not how it's supposed to be looking like. And then, well, they can change. So here, this is the stuff which is kind of ultra important. Of course, we need our power up. So this is the next thing which we want to have. So as you can see, we're just not doing too much. We're just applying all the new objects, their corresponding sprites. But this is then pretty much it. And then of course we need a last thing. So we know where the boundaries are. So the programmer just understands, okay, here are our walls, and therefore we just have a layer which is called instances in here. Copy paste, come on, instances invisible. Okay, instances. Here we go, because I'm lazy, and then later on we will just toggle this out. Why is that important? Well, because we want to have some walls which are not to be seen by the player, but they are kind of the hidden background mechanics. They are functional. Therefore, where's that wall? Here we go, and then we just place them where the walls are supposed to be. So once again, 8 by 8, because this is a very small game. Then we just place them here where those tubes are supposed to be, and second one here, come on, here, and then of course the last one on top. And then we pretty much finished our collisions, and of course let's get rid of that stuff because we don't want that. And of course we want to have kind of an area which is then below, which is just signaling, okay, you're not supposed to go out there. This is what we call then, or what I generally call a controller, which we have as an object also. Give him a nice little sprite, and then just place it on, no, the invisible layer, and then we just place it once here. So we know where the stuff is, but for example, it doesn't necessarily is visible for the player because he doesn't or she doesn't need to see it, and then make it good looking. And of course, we pretty much did almost everything which we need. So let me check again. Let GUI player this thing, and of course here we could have our blocks, which we haven't done. So let's create our blocks, and we have different kind of blocks. So let's say, for example, HP1, HP2, 3, and then indestructible, and therefore they have one thing in common. They share same characteristics. Basically, they just have different kind of sprites, but they are supposed to be bouncing off, and therefore we can actually create a parent object. So block parent, and this thing is then having or inheriting it from our block parent, and therefore here this is good. And then, for example, it just signified then that these things are kind of overlaid. Then, for example, the parent is having, let's say, 1 HP or 2 or 3 or whatever, and then all the children, which is then 1 HP, 2, 3 or whatever, and then they have the same functionality, and therefore we don't need to repeat code for the same stuff. And therefore, as you can see, I just copy paste that, and then here the parent is then in there also. But so we can actually understand that there is a difference. We give those children different kind of sprites, and therefore it is a little bit more visual and therefore easier to see. And then of course the last one, how did I call you? Yeah, object indestructible, and then this would be the black dude. And of course we can then manually put them on instances, those blocks, which is possible. So here, here, here. I wouldn't recommend it. Let's make it a little bit easier by just having a spawner, which is then spawning that stuff. And then of course, if you like to customize it by hand, you can do this, but this is kind of wasting time and resources, and therefore we are not gonna do it. So what else do we have? So we got our blocks, the parent, the player, and the controller, and the walls. And I guess, yeah, this is then the last thing which we need, our control objects. So here we go, which is just basically spawning, and therefore we just place it in there. Of course we don't know how the functionality is because we are the graphics dude, do that, and therefore here we are pretty much done. So once again, as you can see, now this is the first part of the collaboration of the game designer vision, how it's supposed to be looking like, and then the graphics dude making it kind of happen. So how it looks like, as you can see, now you cannot do nothing is happening. So for example, once we start, it's rolling, but there's pretty much nothing to see here. There is definitely nothing in there. So nice background area, scrolling, then you can see, aha, something is blinking, so this is important, the player, but this is everything and nothing, because it's just then, well, a show without interaction, which is definitely not what we want. Alrighty, so here we got this set up, and now we can actually jump into the critical role, which is our programmer. So our programmer is just saying like, alrighty, so here I got everything set up. So the first thing which we want to do is, alrighty, we got our player, let's give him some movement, because that would be kind of boring if the player couldn't be moving. So here we go. Where do I have my player? Here we go. And then, for example, we're just checking for our keyboard. I've done that quite a lot of times. So here we're just checking, hey, keyboard check. So basically a constant check of our VK right. So basically this is on your keyboard, the left key, and then on the right key, and then we are storing that into a variable, and then we're just saying like, hey, update that by right minus left, and then basically we will update all the time if we are consistently pressing. So basically here what can come out is just a 0 or 1 and 0 and 1, and then for example once we run it, you can see we can move. It's a little bit slow, so let's pimp it up a little bit. So therefore have another variable, call it var speed. Here not the regular speed, because this is already an inbuilt variable, so you need to create our own one. Wrap that around here and have, say it times, well, whatever comes out in here. So, and once, for example, we start it, we have a faster moving thing, and of course then you can adapt it if you like. So here this is just for us, okay, nicely. This is then much more controllable. Alrighty, so here, all right, and now we're gonna jump into the next part, which could be the ball physics, but I thought like, hey, let's go with object spawn blocks, because then we have something tangible in our room, and then therefore we can expand on this point on. So basically it is just placed here. It's doing for now nothing. So we just add one create event, and this is where we are spawning all our blocks, where we are spawning all our magic in the game, and therefore we can actually make this quite easy. So basically we just go instance create. So I'm going to copy paste that, and then X, Y, and then layer. Here we go. We just copy the one because we are on instances layers anyway, and then we're gonna spawn a few blocks with HP of 1. Of course, this is not very satisfying because we're just spawning 1, and therefore we're gonna have and create a for loop. Hopefully you know how for loops work. So basically for I, and then we iterate 15 times, and then iterate it 15 times, we do something. And for now, of course, this is, well, still spawning 15 times on the same spot, 1 HP block. Not very cool. And therefore we're gonna say like, hey, E, because E is iterated on times 16, because these blocks are 16 by 8, so 16 width and 8 height. So therefore we are just adding that. And then, for example, once we start that thing, you see a few of them, but of course the issue is they have the same color. Not so good. We're gonna fix that quickly. So for that, first of all, we're gonna have a second loop in there, which is then used for the height also. But of course we don't want to have 15. Let's go for 10 and give it a different kind of variable for iteration. Let's go for K. Why not? And then add this to K times 8, because 8 is the height, and therefore boom, we get our thing, this thing set up. And of course this will work, so we can close that thing. But of course for now we want to change a little bit how the blocks are being there. So therefore, once again, it's pretty neat to have a parent, and then in the create event of the parent we are adding two things. First of all, HP, which we haven't done, so HP, and the default would be a 1. And then we want to, if we are having an image attached to it, so basically here we want to take a random one of those if they have it. So we just go image index, and then set it to image number. This is giving basically returning a number, how many indexes one sprite has, and then therefore we want to go for a random. So range, here we go between 0, then the image number, and here we go -1 because the 0 is counted with, else this could throw an error because you are getting out of bounds. And then we need to do a little bit of applying to all the blocks, because this one, well, we can leave as it is because it's default 1, but here we say this one has actually 2 HP, so we inherit, but say, hey, HP is 2, close it. This one has HP3, boom, and close it. And I guess for the indestructible, you can guess it. Pause. Yep, you guessed it right. You just give it a little bit higher number than 3. So let's say something like this. Yeah, this should be long enough. So basically you can destroy it, but this will take a little bit longer. And therefore, once we start it, you get something like this, and then therefore nicely set up, and it's randomized. This is the way we like. And of course you can manually override that if you like, but I think good enough. Alrighty, so let's jump now into the next thing, which is the ball. And here, well, we need to have some kind of physics. They are luckily for us inbuilt in GameMaker Studio. So let's go for the create event, the cheat sheet, and then we just say like, hey, first of all, let's go in a random direction. So I just say, hey, direction, let's go 60. I will explain why I do this. Then start with an alarm. Let's go by, I don't know, 1 second also, so 60 or 100, doesn't really matter. The idea behind this is, for example, each time, for example, the ball just goes down here and is being destroyed, we need to respawn it at specific spot, and then once it's spawned, you don't want it to automatically go, you just need 1 second, then it starts moving, and then the player can adjust, and then this is of course much nicer way and cleaner way to establish a kind of a new round with a new ball. And then we give it a speed value of 3. Let's go for, why not? And therefore it will just start a little bit delayed, which is the idea behind it. For now, this is doing nothing. So for example, if you start it, then this thing will go here, and then actually 60, it will go here, and then nothing happens. Not the most optimal way how to start. Therefore, what do? Well, we put something in the step event, which is inbuilt. So this is a pretty sweet thing, which is called move bounce solid. And then if it's moving there and it's encountering something solid, so this is where we placed our walls, then this thing should bounce off them. But a little thing which you need to know in advance, these things which you bounce off need to be solid. So not the ball itself, but the things which you're bouncing off, and therefore you need to flag them as solid. And once we start it, you will see delay, bounce, 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 and then of course it goes down. So the next thing which we of course want to do is flag our player as solid also, so we can actually play, close those walls. And then I have already done quite a lot of things concerning how the physics of the ball work. But now we need to and want to destroy the bricks, so the blocks which are here, and therefore we cannot flag them as solid also, because then it would just bounce off them, then we never touch, and then, well, you don't really technically destroy them, which is pretty bad. So therefore what do? We just have our own collision of the ball with block parents, so basically all of them. And here we input the logic. First of all, we need to take the HP away, so HP minus equal minus equals equal minus. Let's go. Let's go like this. This is actually easier syntax for me. And then of other, so basically we want to decrease of the block's HP. And then, for example, if this other HP is depleted, so basically it's equal or smaller than the 0, then we say instance destroy. So basically we are destroying the other blocks, so therefore we just say other, not the ball of course. ID, you can say other or other.id, basically the same. I like it, so it just signified, okay, we destroyed the other thing which we are colliding with, which is then of course the blocks. Alrighty, so but what besides that do we want to do? Because now we would shred through all the blocks, which we don't want to do, and therefore we need to bounce that thing. And for that we do something which is a suboptimal way. There are definitely more better ones, but we simply say, hey, the direction of our ball once we are hitting a block, multiply it by -1, and then we just go in the opposite direction. So let's say, for example, you're going 100, then it's minus 180. If you go 100, then we go minus 180, and so on. Therefore, it's okay. This does work, by the way. So for example, once we start it, as you can see, it does work. But now we have a little issue that we can destroy the blocks and we're bouncing off, but we need to create the logic which is below, so basically our controller. So the controller, once again, is nowhere to be seen, so let's put them under indivisibles. So here we go. Then, for example, once we are getting below, let's go really below, then what do? We want to destroy the ball. So basically we just go for collision, objects, ball. First of all, instance destroy. So once again, other ID. So now we are just destroying the ball, which is then getting outside of our range, because then it would kind of, the game would be kind of over because the ball is outside the view, and then not a good game. And second of all, we have kind of a reset system. So basically we have lives. As you can see, this is an inbuilt one, greenishly, and then we just go 3. Good enough for us. And then, for example, once we the ball comes down, we just say, hey, -1 life, destroy the other ball, and then we can make a little nice check and say like, hey, is our lives smaller equals to 0? So basically we spend our lives, then we say like, hey, game start. Here we go, we start our game. So basically here everything is getting reset to the very beginning. And for example, if our lives of course are bigger, boom, so bigger than 0, so we still have some lives left, we want to do something like spawn the ball. And for example, here we just say visible, so it looks actually neater than here, kind of at this position. So here at the bottom left you have some coordinates of the x, y. If, for example, if we are hovering over with our mouse, so this could be 230 by 380, all right, something like this. 230 by 380, and then instance create. Here we go. These would be then our input parameters. What do we want to do? Well, on our instances layer, and what our object balls, and then we create a fresh ball. So let's check it out. As you can see, bounce, bounce, bounce outside of the view, but now it's going on and working pretty neatly. So this is, by the way, pretty cool also. And it's bouncing off the player. This is because he's flagged as solid also. And well, we could be finished by now, but let's do a little bit more, not too much by the way. So here we will import or include a little power up system. So basically of this, it doesn't really matter. Alrighty, so the next thing which is kind of important for us is that we want to have a power up, which we haven't designed. So here, this is basically just thing which is just falling downwards. So we just give it a direction. Downwards is 270, goes it, and then speed, let's go for 2, 3, 3, why not? Then it's just falling down. And of course, if the player isn't collecting it, so it's falling just down and the player hasn't collected it, we need to have a failsafe. So basically we can go into our controller also, have a second collision check for those blocks for the player, now for the power up, and then we can just say, hey, instance destroy other, and then it will destroy the power-ups which we haven't caught. But for example, what do we do if we catch actually one? So here we just go into our player, set up a collision with the power-up, and here we just want to expand the image X scale. So image X scale plus equals 0.05, something like this, a small number. And then we're just checking, hey, is our image X scale, so we don't want it to grow too much, smaller or equals to 1.3, so something like this. So we cannot grow for for infinity, and therefore it will stay nicely, then grow, and you will see that in the game. And now we need to create a chance mechanism into our object parent. So here, once it's being destroyed, we say a var chance and just set it to, I don't know, be random between 0 to 100. This is one way how to do it. Of course, there are more, I guess, other ways. So if our chance is bigger than 95, we go. Then we say, alrighty, instance, create once again, tuck, 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 layer, and then the object pick up. Of course, maybe because for testing it's a little bit difficult because the chance is pretty low. So let's go 5% or 95% chance to create that thing, and now we can actually check it out. First thing, we need to destroy the other thing. Here we go. Not sure what actually the issue was, because that didn't actually make any sense. So let's see now. That was actually unexpected. I have no idea what actually happened. Boom. Yeah. You can see we're getting bigger. Yes. Bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And we are collecting quite a few of those. So therefore, let's make the chance a little bit lower. So let's go 95 again. And then this is solid. Alrighty, and I guess we are pretty much done. Let me see, 17 minutes. Yeah, last time it was 25. So everything is in there. We got our mechanics, we got the power up. Maybe what you can do, and this is the last thing, this is of course optional. You just say, all right, for example, if the ball falls down, and then we can actually say player, object player, image X scale, by punishing him. So we are reducing his power up, and then he's reduced to image X scale of 1, which is his starting value. And then we're pretty much done. As you can see, all works. Of course, here, one thing, did this player spawner. Actually, I did everything. So once again, little information. So to make this happen, I guess it took me, let's say, for researching, so for the game designer and for the graphics guy, so as in this role, took me about 1.5 hours, maybe 1 hour of researching and checking out, maybe a little bit less, because I was looking for good material, didn't find any, and then I jumped on the ones which I showed at the very beginning, and then I had to check out how good it is. Then I had to split it in parts, so the part thing for the GUI, and then checking out if it does look good, and it did, and then I checked it out, and therefore that was the shorter part. Of course, here normally for video games, resources and gathering and planning upfront is of course a big thing, but here this is a very easy version. And then for the programming, let me lie, I guess 2 hours, 2.5, 3 total. Of course, with testing, programming, implementing everything, trying, and so on. And I guess if you are a beginner and you want to do this for a game jam, or just want to start producing games and you're not sure how the procedure is, this is roughly it. And then, for example, you could expect to create such an easy game if you are medium to expert, which I'm not. I guess I'm advanced or something like this. Then you can make such a prototype even a little bit more refined in one day, because it's quite easy logic and there's not too much going on besides a little bit of movement, and you can refine and so on. The rest is then just most of the time, once you got your prototype ready, is just basically you refine it, you tune the value. So for example, a little bit faster movement or slower, or for example the spawn rate is going to get changed, and then you start to customize, and then you're starting to put some shenanigans, maybe some extra effects and so on. So basically 20% is prototype or 10%, and the rest is then adding stuff up and polishing. So once again, once you are finished with the prototype, which is what we did by the way, start adding and stacking up. But for the prototype, for such a project, 1 day max. Alrighty, that was it from my side. Hopefully that was giving you some good insights. And if not, oh well. Have a nice day anyway. Alrighty, that was it from my side. Have a good one. One up indie.